to the future of Israel and the Jewish people. We're going to continue with Joseph, part 3. This is an exciting part. We're watching a man who was his father's favorite son. He treated him like he was his only son. And he took care of his father's business. He got sold into slavery. He took care of his master's business. He got thrown into jail. He took care of the warden's business. And now he's taking care of Pharaoh's business. Wow, where integrity will go when God's with you. So let's look at people's integrity rather than their talent only. Yeah, as you know, we're not going to preach tonight. We're not going to try to teach you anything. We're going to ask you to research with us. Open your Hebrew scriptures. We're still in chapter 41. If you're a Gentile, Old Testament. Remember, it's not obsolete. It just preceded the Greek Testaments. And if you're a Muslim, download a free app, the Holy Bible, and read from chapter 41, which is the first book of the Bible. There's 66 books in the Bible. And all of them, except 2 books, were written by Hebrews. Well, Joseph is in charge now. So Potiphar says to Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Amazing. Okay? Pharaoh took his signature ring off his finger and put it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in a royal robe of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. Well, you see, linen is not worn by working class people. So he elevated him. Everybody looks at an officer, they know by his uniform what his rank is. You know, gold is royalty. So he's become like a cabinet member. He had him ride in the chariot as his second in command. Very important. And the men shouted before him, make way. So he had people that went ahead of him. Though he put him in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, but without your word, no one will lift a finger or a foot in Egypt. Very important. Pharaoh gave Joseph a new name, and he also gave him the daughter of the priest as a wife. And Joseph went throughout the land. Well, if you're in charge, you really have to survey things. When I was in commercial real estate on an international level, I would get on a plane and I would go to Chicago or London or wherever I needed to go. And I had to check out what the situation was. I was a consultant, so I had to be a problem solver. So Joseph is a big problem solver. He's my favorite character in the Old Testament, and I was supposed to be named Joseph, but I was named Frank. I was named after my father rather than my grandfather. And he was a man of integrity. So Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Later on, you're going to find out that in order to minister in the house of the Lord, when they establish the temple, you had to be 30 years old. Okay, no coincidence. And Joseph went out throughout Pharaoh's presence and traveled throughout Egypt. During his 7 years of abundancy, the land produced plentiful. Joseph collected all the food produced in those 7 years for the abundance in Egypt and stored them in the cities. In each city, he put the food grown in the fields surrounding him. So he left the food right where it was grown. Cut down on transportation, then it was available for the people who were going to need it. Joseph stored up huge quantities of grain, like the sand of the sea. And it was so much that he stopped keeping record because it was beyond measure. So, very important. Very important. Why wheat? Well, wheat is a very stable product, and when we don't mess with it, and it's natural like it was in those days, very good for the body. Today, we mess with it so much, it's not that good for the body. It also lasts without refrigeration. It's kept dry. Sure, you have to protect it from rodents and insects, but that's why you put it in a place where these animals and creatures can't get to it. And the way they had such a large measure, the little bit they would have lost to these creatures wouldn't have been a problem. So he stored it up. Before the year of famine came, 2 sons were born to Joseph. Okay, so now he's fruitful himself. Okay, he named the first one Manasseh and the second one, well, with Manasseh, he named him that because God has made me forget my own troubles and my father's household. So up until he raised his own family, he was still thinking probably of his original family. And you remember that when Rebekah came to Isaac, it was after his mother died, and she comforted him. So the second son was Ephraim, and he said, "It is because God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering." You see, the word says that you're made perfect through suffering. Well, what is made perfect? Your character. Your character is what you develop. Well, we need to really focus more on our temperament and keep it under positive control, not negative emotion. So you'll see why this is important. The 7 years of abundance in Egypt came to an end. Every good thing comes to an end. You know, recently I heard a world leader say, there's always a cycle. It goes up and it comes down. You have to be prepared for the down. Okay? And the 7 years of famine began, just as Joseph had said. Now that's how you test a prophet. If what he said doesn't come true, he was not a prophet. He wasn't speaking for God. There was a famine in all the other lands, but in the whole land of Egypt, there was food. That's the difference. Being in the eye of a hurricane, you don't experience the storm. God wants you to be in the eye, not in the storm. When all Egypt began to feel the famine, the people cried to Pharaoh for food. Then Pharaoh told all the Egyptians, go to Joseph and do whatever he tells you to do. I had a prophet tell me that once when I was suffering from 4th degree cancer. I followed his instructions. Here it is, 11 years later, I'm 100% healed. When the famine spread over the whole country, Joseph opened his storehouses and sold grain to the Egyptians. Remember, he took 20% of the harvest. That's pretty much what our government sometimes does, doesn't it? On our income tax. He sold the grain to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe throughout Egypt, and all the countries came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph because the famine was severe in all the world. Well, if you work hard as you can to make as much as you can, then you'll be able to give away as much as you can. If you have nothing, you can't give nothing. But you notice Joseph sold it to them, especially the foreigners, and that's important. Okay? He was there to protect and make sure the country survived. Okay? So, Joseph's brothers finally have to come to Egypt. This is going to get really interesting. Turn to page 40, chapter 42 of Genesis. And it says, when Jacob learned that there was grain in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why do you keep looking at each other?" He continued, "I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy some for us, so that we may live and not die." Remember, his family was promised the land of Israel as an inheritance. Then the 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain from Egypt. But Jacob did not send Benjamin, Joseph's brothers, with the others, because he was afraid that harm might come to him. So Israel's sons were among those who went to buy grain from the famine was in the land of Canaan also. Benjamin was one of 2 sons of Rachel, which was his favorite wife. It was born to him in old age, and when Joseph passed out of the scene temporarily, he put his attention on Benjamin. Now, Joseph was the governor of the land, the one who sold the grain to all the people. So when Joseph's brothers arrived, they bowed down to him with their face to the ground. As soon as Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but he pretended to be a stranger and spoke harshly to them. "Where did you come from?" he asked. Now you got to remember, if you heard our previous shows, when he was 17, he had a dream that his brothers were going to bow down to him, and they hated him for it. Well, now it's happening, just the way God told him in the dream. "From the land of Canaan," they replied, "to buy food." Well, that's an honest answer. Although Joseph recognized his brothers, they didn't recognize him. Well, you got to remember, he's dressed like an Egyptian now, clean shaven probably. You know, we see those pictures where they wore those white skirts and their breasts were shaven and they look like a statue. Then he remembered the dream about them, and he said to them, "You are spies." Well, he's testing them. "You have come to see where our land is and unprotected." "No, my lord," they answered. "Your servants have come to buy food. We are all brothers of one man. Your servant are honest men, not spies." Well, listen to this. "No," he said, "you have come to see where our land is unprotected." He's testing them now. But they replied, "Your servant was 12 brothers. The one son who lives in the land of Canaan, the youngest, is now with our father, and one is no more." So they're telling the truth here. To their knowledge, Joseph doesn't exist anymore. Joseph said to them, "It's just as I told you. You are spies, and this is how you will be tested. As sure as Pharaoh lives, you will not leave this place unless your younger brother comes here. Send one of your numbers to get your brother, and the rest of you will be kept in prison, so that the word may be tested to see if you are telling the truth. If you're not, then as sure as Pharaoh lives, you are spies." So he devises this plan up, and he says, put them all in custody for 3 days. Here comes 3 days again. You know, they're put in a tomb, so to speak, for 3 days. The New Testament talks about 3 days in the tomb. On the 3rd day, Joseph says to them, "Do this, and you will live. I fear God." Okay? So God probably talked to Joseph, said, "Okay, enough of this. Okay? You know, vengeance is mine, says the Lord. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers stay here in prison, while the rest of you go and take grain back for your starving household." So he realized that if there was a problem and only one guy went back, how much grain could he bring for their family? How long would they be able to live on 1 bag or 2 bags of grain? So now he's thinking, I better send 10 of them back to make sure the family survives. Otherwise, I'll bring worse harm on them than they brought on me. "But you must bring your younger brother to me, so that your word may be verified and that you may not die. This is the process to be done. Okay? What is he looking for? He's looking for his younger brother. Why is he looking for his younger brother? He wants to make sure they didn't kill him. Wants to make sure they didn't treat him harshly. Okay? So, they say to one another, surely we are being punished because of our brother. We saw how distressed he was when he pleaded with us for his life, but we wouldn't listen. That's why this disaster has come upon us. Reuben replied, didn't I tell you not to sin against the boy? But you wouldn't listen. Now we must give an accounting for his blood. They're seeing this as a judgment of God. Okay? They did not realize that Joseph could understand them, since he was using an interpreter. He turned away from them and began to weep, but then turned back and spoke to them again. He had Simeon taken from them and bound before their eyes. Why did he pick Simeon? I'll bet Simeon was the ringleader against him. Reuben was trying to help him. Judah was trying to help him. Benjamin wasn't there. Simeon probably was the ringleader. Okay? And anyway, Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with the grain, put each man's silver back in the sack, and give them provisions for the journey. After this was done for them, they loaded their grain on their donkeys and they left. So he wouldn't accept their money from his family. He probably figured I deserve at least my family to be spared paying for it, since, you know, I've saved the whole country. At that place where they were stopped for the night, one of them opened his sack to get feed for the donkeys, and he saw his silver in the mouth of the sack. My silver has been returned. Silver represents redemption, believe it or not. He said to his brothers, here it is in your sack. Their hearts sank, and they turned to each other, trembling and saying, what is this that God has done to us? They're still blaming it on God, right? Well, it is in a way. When they came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan, they told him all that had happened to them. And they said, the man who was Lord over the land spoke harsh to us and treated us as though we were spies on the land. Well, isn't it interesting? They did such terrible things to Joseph, and they're only concerned about that they weren't treated right verbally. Isn't that what we complain about? Somebody being rude to us? But we said to him, we are honest men. We are not spies. We were 12 brothers, sons of one father. One is no more, and the youngest is now with our father in Canaan. Then the man who is Lord over the land said to us, this is how I will know whether you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers here with me, and take food for your starving family, household, and go. Well, but bring your younger brother to me, so I will know that you are not spies, but honest men. Then I will give you your brother back to you, and you can trade in the land. Well, now Simeon was going to experience what it was like to be a prisoner. As they were emptying their sacks, there to each man's sack was a pouch of silver. When they and their father saw the money pouches, they were frightened. Then the father Jacob said to him, you have deprived me of my children. Joseph is no more. Simeon is no more. And now you want to take Benjamin. Everything is against me. So, poor Jacob, known as Israel now, didn't understand what God was doing. But here comes Reuben, the firstborn, very important, said to his father, you may put both of my sons to death if I do not bring Benjamin, bring him back to you. Entrust him to my care, and I will bring him back. But Jacob said, my son will not go down there with you. This boy, his brother is dead, and he is my only one left. Now he's got all these other sons, but he sees Benjamin as everything, okay? If harm comes to him on the journey you are taking, you will bring my gray hair down to the grave in sorrow. Okay, so where are we? They run out of food. Second journey to Egypt. Chapter 43. Now the famine was still severe in the land. Remember, it was going to be 7 years. So when they had eaten all the grain they had brought from Egypt, their father said to them, go back and buy us a little more food. But Judah now, this is the fourth son, said to him, Reuben failed, he couldn't convince the father. The man warned us solemnly, you will not see my face again unless your brother is with you. If you will send our brother along with us, we will go down and buy food for you. Interesting, our brother. Their attitude has changed towards Rachel's children. Okay? But if you will not send him, we will not go down, because the man said to us, you will not see my face again unless your brother is with you. Now remember, Simeon is still in prison. Israel answers, why did you bring this trouble on me by telling the man you had another brother? They replied, the man questioned us closely about ourselves and our family. Is your father still alive? He asked. Do you have another brother? We simply answered the questions. How are we to know? He would say, bring your brother down here. You know, they're right. But they don't know that Joseph knew who they were. They didn't know who Joseph was. Then Judah said to Israel, his father, let the boy alone with me, and we will go at once, so that we will, with you and our children, may live and not die. I myself will guarantee his safety. Very good. You can hold me personally responsible for him if I don't bring him back to you and set him here before you. I will bear the blame before you all my life. As it is, if we have not delayed, we could have gone and returned twice. So it was a long time. Thank God Joseph sent enough food for the family. Then the father Israel said to them, it must be, then do this. Put some of the best products of the land in your bag. Take them down to the man as a gift. A little balm, a little honey, a little spices, a little myrrh, some pistachio nuts, some almond nuts. Remember, there's a famine going on, and these things they still had, fortunately, to give as a gift. And they're giving them, and they're valuable to begin with, but now they're even more valuable because of the famine. Okay? So they prepare a gift for Joseph, not knowing who it is. Take double the amount of silver with you, for you must return the silver that was put back in your mouth of your bag. Perhaps it was a mistake. Take your brother also, and go back to the man at once, and may God bless you. May God, well, it really says, and may God grant you mercy before the man, so that he will let your other brother and Benjamin come back to me. As for me, if I am bereaved, I am bereaved. So he finally gives in. Sometimes it takes time to do what you got to do. You just have to give time for people to make decisions. So the men took the gift. It's interesting. They don't say brothers here. They say men. They accepted the responsibility. They're maturing, and doubled the amount of silver, and Benjamin also. They hurried down to Egypt and presented themselves to Joseph. Now, Benjamin's probably about the age of what Joseph was when he was captured and taken into Egypt. Then Joseph saw Benjamin with them, and he said to the steward in his house, "Take these men to my house, slaughter an animal, prepare a dinner. They are to eat with me at noon." The men did as Joseph told him, and took the men to Joseph's house. Now the men were frightened when they were taken to Joseph's house. They thought, "We brought here because of the silver that was put back in the sacks the first time. He wants to attack us, overpower us, and seize us, and slay us, and take our donkeys." Now, donkeys were valuable, no doubt about it. But when Egypt was such a tremendous civilization, and this was the governor, he didn't need their donkeys. Okay? So off they go to Joseph's house. And so they went up to Joseph's steward and spoke to him at the entrance of the house. "Please, sir," they said, "we came down here the first time to buy food, but at the place where we stopped for the night, we opened our sacks, and each of us found silver, the exact weight, in the mouth of the sack. So we have brought it back to us. We have also brought back additional silver for us to buy food. We don't know who put the silver in our sack." "It's all right," he said. "Don't be afraid. Your God, the God of your father, has given you treasure in your sack. I received your silver." And then he brought Solomon out to them. Well, thank you. And we are going to continue next week. So remember, you can go to our website for other shows, www.thefutureofisrael.org. You want to write to me, write to info@thefutureofisrael.org. We ask you to come back and finish up this story, how God redeemed the Jewish people, how he separates them from the Canaanites that are evil, and how he teaches them how to be a great civilization. And that happens in the book of Exodus. I hope you're enjoying these shows. Have a great night. Enjoy yourself. Trust in God. Read your scriptures. Be with us next week to finish the story, which will go on for more than a week. God bless you. Shalom. And thank you.